There are stories about sea monsters that drag entire ships to the deep darkness of the ocean. Dragons with eyes so red that they burned like fire. Or even whales that could swallow you whole in a heartbeat. Pirates believe these stories to be true. And who knows, the ocean is covered in mystery, so who's to say that they were wrong? Hello friends and welcome to my channel once again, or maybe you're new here. I'm filming in front of my window, so if the light is changing, it's because of that. Today I'm going to continue my series called The Myths of the Sea. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna continue with this series, but there will be a few other videos. And if you have any suggestions, you can always place them in the comment section. I actually wanted to make a video about the Kraken, but I couldn't really find a lot of information, so I decided to focus on sea monsters instead, and it's way more fun anyway. Marine monsters can have many forms, including tentacled beasts, sea serpents and dragons. And since my Myths of the Sea series is mostly about what pirates believed in, I wanted to focus on the monsters that they thought they had encountered during their journeys. And if you know about other dangerous monsters, you can leave that in the comments. I would like to read about it. And I also know about the Loch Ness monster, which I really hope I can find one day in Scotland. But I will make another video about that because he doesn't live in the sea but in a lake. And I know that mermaids / sirens are also considered evil sea creatures in some stories, but I already made an entire video about them, so if you want to learn more about mermaids, you can check the video in the link in the description, and I will also place it on the end of this video. Without further ado, let's start with the video and with the first monster, and I really hope you're gonna enjoy it. And the first monster I want to talk about is of course the Kraken, because that was the whole reason why I wanted to make this video. The first time when I heard about the Kraken was when I watched Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. I really love that film, it's one of my favorites. I was a big fan when I was younger. And in this movie the Kraken could be summoned from aboard the Flying Dutchman. They would use a giant capstan hammer that would send a shockwave through the ocean that served as a call to the creature. And Davy Jones was the captain of the Flying Dutchman in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, and he was the one who would give the orders. When you were marked with a black spot, the Kraken would find you and kill you. And this mark could only be removed by Davy Jones himself. And that's why the British Navy wants to possess the locker of Davy Jones in the movie. The Pirates of the Caribbean movies took some liberties with the Kraken, but there are some similarities to the original stories. The word Kraken was first heard in the 12th century. It came from Scandinavian legends and derives from the word Kraken or Kraki, which according to a Norwegian dictionary means malformed or overgrown crooked tree. And when you hear the description of the creature, you can really understand why it's called that. It was described similarly to the Pirates of the Caribbean version as a huge squid-like sea monster with tentacles that could reach more than a kilometer long. His eyes were huge and evil, and his hunger never fulfilled. He would attack ships without warning and drag them to the deepest, darkest places in the ocean. And that would instantly kill all the crew members on board. And sometimes there were signs that a Kraken was lurking beneath the surface. When schools of fish tried to escape, when the weather would become bad and when waves would be very high, that could be a sign that the Kraken was near. But there would be no time to escape anyway. You were already doomed from the start. And as I said before, the first description of the Kraken could be dated back to the 12th century. It's from a Norse saga, and I'm probably gonna pronounce it all wrong, but it's called Urvar Ödir. And Urvar and his son were crossing the deep waters of the coast of Norway, and when they were crossing the oceans, they encountered two Krakens. They were enormous and father and son were terrified by them, but they managed to escape and returned home. When they returned home, they reported everything that they had seen to the villagers, and that's when their story became legends. But it is possible that stories of the Kraken are even older. There are similar stories, but with creatures with different names. In Norwegian folklore, a creature that looked a lot like it was sighted in the Greenland Sea by a group of sailors. There are also stories from the other side of the world. When pirates were ruling the Caribbean, they also mentioned creatures that looked a lot like the Kraken. But is there any proof that a Kraken had existed once? Some bones were found on the ocean floor years ago, and they could prove that a Kraken had existed. At least some type of Kraken. And it could still exist because we haven't discovered the entirety of the ocean yet. So who knows, maybe somewhere in the places where we can't come, there are very enormous big creatures lurking beneath the surface. But even now there are still giant squids that are swimming in our oceans. Of course they are not as big as a Kraken, but they are still bigger than you might expect. Scientists even found one ichthyosaur skeleton, which is an extinct sea creature, and it looked like the ribcage was cracked by a very long tentacle. So who knows, there were also once dinosaurs roaming our earth, and they were enormous, so who can say that a Kraken wasn't swimming in our oceans when we were not even in existence? But I'm not sure if they still do. Next up we have a creature with a very difficult name. I always call them turtles with an island on their back, but it's called the Aspis. I really hope I say it right. It's very difficult for me, as I already spoiled a little bit. This fabled creature looked like a turtle with a giant island on his back. It is first mentioned in ancient Greek text, and its name is derived from the Greek word Aspis, which means asp, probably because of his long neck, and it also means shield, which is probably because of its shell. And the Greek word chelone means turtle. This creature is also mentioned in Latin writing, and it's called the asp turtle. Sometimes it is even described as a whale instead of a turtle, but I will come back to that later. The stories do have a lot in common. In all the stories, the island is used as a distraction or as bait. Sailors would beach their ships alongside the island because they believed it was safe. When they would make fires on the island, the turtle would feel the heat and he would submerge into the ocean, of course with everything on his back with him. Fighting the monster was pointless because it was so huge you couldn't even know where to start. Its skin was very tough and its mind as well. It could withstand great pain and injury. It could swim with great power and could hold its breath for weeks at a time. This is why the sailors only saw the island and not the head of the turtle, because he would be underwater for a very long time. His shell sustained a large ecosystem with trees and sometimes even animals, if they did not drown, and they would all bend to his will. The creature would not always kill, only when he was hungry or provoked. He would not chase after ships, he would lure them without knowing it. The island that looked so peaceful, but there was a big chance that it would be the last place on earth that you would ever visit. Then we have the Cetus, known as the Kytos in ancient Greek, a huge sea monster that would play a big part in the stories of Perseus and of Heracles, or better known as Hercules. They both killed the monster in their stories, but the story of Perseus is better known. This story takes place in Ethiopia and starts when the queen Cassiopeia proclaimed that her daughter Andromeda was the most beautiful creature of all. She even stated that she was more beautiful than the goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite herself. This news reached the god of the sea Poseidon, and he was furious. How could a mortal woman claim such things and insult the gods? He decided to punish the queen and sent a giant sea monster named Kytos to destroy the shores of the region. Cassiopeia and her husband, the king Cepheus, did not know what to do. So they went to the oracle to ask for advice. The oracle told them that they should sacrifice their daughter Andromeda to the monster, so that they could appease the gods. In the meantime, Kytos kept destroying everything on its way. So what choice did they have? They chained their daughter to a rock next to the sea and summoned the monster to come. The monster was almost ready to attack when the Greek hero Perseus appeared and heard about the sacrifice. He freed Andromeda and slew the monster. He killed it either with his sword or turned it to stone with the head of Medusa. Medusa was a monstrous creature he slayed earlier. Perseus and Andromeda fell in love and she would give him many children. There are many descriptions of the Cetus, some associated with a whale and others associated with a fish-like dragon or serpents. And what I notice now after focusing on a few sea creatures is that they have a lot of similarities to each other. They always destroy everything on their path and they always look like sea creatures that we still have today, like turtles or whales or squids or snakes. And I think we can say for certain that the Aspidoculone and the Cetus never existed in real life. Next up we have the devil whale, which is also known as a monstrous sea turtle in some stories. This legendary sea monster was enormous and it could swallow entire ships. It would also look like an island when it was sleeping, but not with a lot of biome on it. Many of the stories are very similar to the Aspidiculone, but this time it's a whale. One of the most famous stories of the devil's whale are from Sinbad the Sailor's first voyage. He is a fictional hero from Arabic culture. I have his stories as well on my bookshelf and I love his stories. In one of the stories, Sinbad loses his wealth and he decides to go to sea to restore it. He sets ashore on an island, but then he discovers that it's not an island, but actually the giant whale. There are some other sailors on the whale and they make a fire, which wakes the giant whale. The whale dives into the deep depths and kills almost everybody on the whale. And the sailors on his ship go away with the ship and leave Sinbad there to die. But he's saved by a passing wooden trough sent by Allah. There was, however, a sinking of a real-life ship called the Essex. It was a ship that hunted down whales but was eventually attacked by a real whale, a sperm whale, in 1820. Some of the crew members survived this and they also talked about a deserted island. This story spread internationally and inspired many stories. Think of Moby Dick or of Monstro in Pinocchio. Then we have the Hydra, which is a serpent-like water figure from Greek mythology and also from Roman mythology. Its lair was by the lake of Lerna in the Argolid, which is now known as Myloi in Greece. It was also believed that this lake was an entrance to the underworld. Archaeologists have discovered that this site was sacred in ancient times. You might know the Hydra from the story in the Disney movie Hercules. It was the offspring of Typhon and Echinta. His breath was poisonous and even the scent of its blood was deadly. The Hydra possessed many heads. If you would cut off one of them, it would regrow twice as much heads in return, which made the Hydra one of the most difficult monsters to defeat. Even near the east, there were stories about a creature that looked like the Hydra. In Babylonian, Assyrian and Sumerian mythology, the god Ninurta defeated the seven-headed serpents. And the most well-known story is of course the story of Hercules and his 12 labors. And I will call him Heracles in this video because that's how the Greeks call him. The Hydra was sent by Hera, who was jealous that Heracles was a son of Zeus and one of his many lovers, Alcmene. The Hydra dwelt in the swamps near Lake Lerna. Heracles was sent by the king of Tiryns to kill it. Heracles covered his mouth and nose with a cloth to protect himself from the poisonous fumes and used flaming arrows to shoot into the Hydra's lair to lure it out. But every time that Heracles struck the Hydra with a sword or a club, the heads would grow back and multiply. Eventually he realized he could not defeat the Hydra this way. He went back and asked his nephew Iolaus for help. His nephew suggested to use a firebrand to scorch the neck stumps after each decapitation. They returned to the Hydra, who was already waiting for them. Heracles would attack the Hydra and Iolaus would satirize the open stumps. When the final head was cut off, Heracles placed it alive and screaming under a great rock. He dipped his arrows in the poisonous blood and his second task was complete. I think it's safe to say that this creature is created by humans and their imagination. The last creature I want to discuss is the sea dragon from Japanese culture called Yamata no Orochi, Orochi for short. The claim of its existence is found in one of the earliest written Japanese documents called the Koyiki and the Nyoji. But the legend of the Orochi is even ancient. The Orochi is described as a dragon with 8 heads and 8 tails. It has big red eyes and a big red belly. The beast is as tall as a couple of hills combined, and he grew moss all over his body and also trees. The Orochi lives in the water and is hostile towards every human. The legend goes that the storm god Susanoo was thrown out of the heaven and landed at the Mount Torikama near the high river in Itsumo province. He met an elderly couple and he discovered that they were the gods. Their names were Ashinatsuchi and Tenatsuchi. They were weeping, but Susanoo did not know why. He asked them why they were so upset. The couple explained that they had 8 daughters, but they had to sacrifice one of their daughters to the Orochi each year, because he demanded a sacrifice. This time it was the turn of their only remaining daughter. Susanoo told the couple that he was the elder brother of the sun goddess Amaterasu, and he offered them his help to slay the water dragon. But he wanted their daughter's hand in marriage in return, and the couple agreed. They worked together to lure the water dragon into a trap. They gave him potions so that he would fall asleep. When the Orochi fell asleep, Susanoo took his chance and slayed the dragon. He sliced the dragon open with his sword. The whole river flowed with blood afterwards. Susanoo discovered another sword in the tail of the dragon, and he recognized it. It was the legendary sword Katano Marukumu, also known as Kusanyi. Susanoo offered the legendary sword to his sister as a gift, and this was his ticket back into heaven. The sword was passed down through generations in the imperial line of Japan. Pirates from Japan would take this story back to the Caribbean. Eventually, the dragon and the serpent became one and the same. You can compare it to the turtle and the whale. It's easy to imagine that stories change during the times that we are on this earth. It's almost impossible to hear the original story from maybe 100 years ago, or if we even go back to medieval times or ancient Rome and ancient Greece. People also like to exaggerate their stories to impress others, or they want to profit from it, so they change the story. But why were these stories there in the first place? We humans love to fantasize, and our ancestors did so as well. Stories can be thrilling, or they are a cautionary tale. It could be a warning to look out for yourself, not to be reckless, or to look out for other people. In case of the pirates, it could have been many reasons. In the darkness of the night, it's really hard to see on an open ocean what's in front of you. So perhaps they saw things that weren't there, or they imagined something. It could be a shadow that was cast of the way some rocks were placed. It could be stories to scare each other so that other pirates would stay away from the sea and they would have more ships to plunder. Or it could have been hallucinations from all the diseases that were on board of ships back then. Anyway, we don't know the reason why they told these stories. We don't know if they were true or not. I personally think that these creatures did not exist. And if they exist, I think they are very deep in our oceans or they are extinct. But it's always a nice tale to tell to people on YouTube, or when you are around a campfire, or maybe even when you're on a ship or a boat in the middle of the ocean. Then you can scare people. I really hope you enjoyed my video about the sea monsters. I really liked doing the research for this video. My next video will be about a spooky theme because it's almost Halloween and I really want to stay in that vibe. I might make 2 videos, but I'm not sure yet. But I'm working on one script which will be finished very soon. And I won't tell you what it is about. You can subscribe to my channel to know what it is about. And you can like this video so that YouTube knows you enjoy my videos. Thank you so much for watching and hopefully I see you the next time. Bye!